Greetings everyone, welcome to Dinosaur Discovery. Today we're going to cover our second expedition to Okanagan Lake. So Pete, apparently we didn't learn our lesson last time. We had to go back there for a session of it. What's different to you about this expedition than the last one?
Well, I didn't have any sighting and you did.
Okay, so that's our treat for you people today, but bear with us because it's toward the end of the expedition.
Yeah, we didn't expect, we go on these expeditions not really expecting anything. We want to try to learn as much as we possibly can. Maybe we learn something one day about the lake itself. Go next day we talk to somebody who gives us a hint about maybe you ought to go to this place or that place. Or maybe we go back to where there was some filming before, where there's been a sighting, an actual video of a sighting. We want to see what that looks like. All of this is useful information.
Oh, speaking of which, hate to cut you off, but when you talked about going to a place where we had a sighting, or where a person had a sighting, I was able to obtain permission from Paul Damara to use his video in a documentary.
Great video.
And yes, that one was really great. I showed the footage to Pete, and one thing that tickled me to death about it was the fact that someone with a scientific mind was analyzing this video without the preconception of, is this faked at all? Yeah. No, he was just looking at it, what could it be, you know? It was a real refreshment because I've always came across people who claim to be scientists and were just simple skeptics.
I believe the first time I saw the Damara video was at Arlene Gall's with Philip O'Donnell, the very first time I went up there. Not knowing even what this thing looked like, that was my first really glimpse of it, and Arlene was willing to share with us, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, that's true. And we decided to go to the place where the sighting took place, at least, you know, approximately. We probably didn't go up to the person's door and knock on the door and say, hey, can we go up to your porch, you know, and overlook the lake? No, we didn't do that. We basically went to that area and kind of did a basic observation around the vicinity.
Well, we did get to where the Damara film was videoed, and it was, you get an outline of the cove in your mind. You get a perspective of the size of things. All of this helped understand perhaps the size of the animal. Not only that, but we had video of a boat right in amongst them, right, these animals. There was more than one of them. And so you could get an idea how large they were, how tall, how long they were. Maybe not so much how wide they were or how deep they were, but at least how long they were.
Yeah. And after that, I believe that we went to Galletly Bay. And that's where I took out the rubber boats again and started to do some underwater filming. Matter of fact, I got a new toy. It was an underwater camera system. And I was eager to try that sucker out. So I took that out there and started to do some underwater filming and stuff like that and experiment with it. But then we got to the real field work. We went back to Rattlesnake Island, and this time we didn't have the storm as we did before. You want to elaborate kind of what we did during that time? Oh, before I forget, we did do like another field experiment involving something that someone else did in the past. I believe his name was Ed Fletcher, and he made a claim that perhaps Ogopogo was attracted to the boat due to some sort of electrolysis effect, you might say.
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. I put together a little galvanic machine and put it on the far shore from Rattlesnake Island on the other side of the channel. It was a pathetic attempt, I have to admit. It didn't work, but it, you know, it's kind of the right idea. It was said that the animal is able to detect electromagnetic radiation in some form, in some way. A lot of fish can do that. A lot of animals can detect in murky water just using this ability. Didn't work. Maybe somebody want to take another attempt at that, think it through a little bit more. I'll talk to you about it if you want to talk to me about it, what it might take. Certainly my failure might be worth something if you want to talk about it, we could do it better.
Well, to be fair about Pete, I don't know if I would call that a failure. I mean, it could be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Oh,
the Ogopogos could have been clear up around Vernon at that time, or it could be clear down there in Manta. You know, you don't know. I mean, the only way you know for certain it's not going to work is if you were to literally try the same experiment over and over and over again and get a negative result, you know.
Yeah. Well, not every experiment's of same value. I would call that a rather low value experiment.
Yeah. Well, this is something that we did, and then we started to measure the channel. We started to stake out the channel, check it out, and then we start to learn about how many people love using the channel as a almost like a drive-through with their boats.
We did do some depth analysis, especially around the caves toward the south side of the island.
Yeah. We went out there, and we made like a knotted ropes every so many feet, you know, and then we would use old-fashioned technology and get the average depth of that.
It was rather crude, but we could say it's roughly 20, 30 feet in the channel at the deepest part. Gets deeper, of course, at the south and north end when you get away from the island. Probably off the island 50 feet is probably, the depth is probably around 50 feet. So it gets deep pretty fast.
Yeah, it's obviously deep enough that a creature could come under that channel and rear up and look at you.
Oh yeah, plenty of room.
So well, not like he was having the sighting in a mud puddle, you know. It was definitely some depth to it, and it adds credibility to the sighting because it makes it completely possible. If it was very shallow there, then it would be ridiculous.
You're right.
And we found out that the whole area is just very steep, like going straight down and almost like it hits bottom. And with my underwater camera system, I was able to view some of that. And it was kind of interesting. But before people start saying, oh, goody, let's use underwater cameras. They work great. Yes and no. It's very hard to utilize those things correctly unless you have some sort of ROV like the Novaks had. They had like their own underwater rail control vehicle, and those are handy. But don't forget, at the end of the day, you are limited to the visibility of the water. I don't care if you have a $5,000, $1 million camera on it. It's not going to see past the visibility of the water. Period. End of story. So, if you go to a mud puddle, you're going to just see nothing but mud. So, we basically stayed there for about 3 days, didn't we? And we went back to, I remember now, we went back to Okanagan Center, where we went the first time, and we had all sorts of different views of the lake, so much activity. We were seeing Ogopogos left and right until we kind of realized that they were all generated by boats.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boats out there. And yeah, that was a little bit on the frustrating side.
Yeah, talking about the frustrating side of that kind of observation, is a real steep learning curve as to what waves look like. because there's so many kinds of waves generated by the wind, some by boats, some simply by ricocheting waves from the shore, other boats, double boats, 3 boats, 5 boat waves. All of these things, until you've seen a few thousand of these waves, you realize what you're seeing and what you're not seeing. And I think it's pretty futile to look for Ogopogo during the day where you're just looking at waves. It's just not going to work.
And that's where we came back to the philosophy of do it during the morning, do it during the evening.
Yeah.
There's another reason for that is there'll be less boats.
Yeah.
There's a better chance of not having boats there.
Yeah. If all you see is a wave or what looks like a moving wave, these waves, obviously waves move. But if you see the front of the wave and you think that's the head, probably not. What you want to see is something actually physically moving through and creating a wave.
Yeah.
Okay? It looks more like a fist moving through the water, creating a splash in front and then a wavelet out to the sides and waves in the back of it like that. Also, you ought to be able to see two actual waves. You should see what the head is doing, and you should see what a tail is doing. If you see the Damara video, you can see both. That's why we know that it was actually a solid object.
Well, here's like an aerial view that people can kind of look at it from that perspective, where you have something that starts at the front, and then it creates somewhat of a V-shaped wave. Ogopogo type animals tend to create a much smaller wave. Motorboats tend to produce a much bigger, wider type of wave. But it always has those sorts of waves, and then you have some back motion, okay? And with Ogopogo, you probably see some sort of back motion of maybe part of a back, maybe part of a tail, you might say. That gives you an idea.
On this picture, you would probably see a head here, and something off in here. You'd see some commotion, but that far back. This is the head. That's the tail. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for this. That's just waves.
Yes, and that's where we think that some of these so-called sightings could be nothing more than just boat waves generated by their own boats. You know, you can go and do like a circle, and then you look behind you. Hey, look, there's Ogopogo. No, it's not. That's just a wave. So that's why we don't recommend that people get into a boat and go up and down the lake, and they'll end up filming their own boat waves and think that's Ogopogo. That's not good science. That's bad science. You know, you need to eliminate all possible explanations. Now to get to the juicy part. We decided to go to Naramatha, and there at Naramatha...
Naramatha is on the south end of the lake.
Yes. So we were actually at Peachland. We went all the way down, came back on up, and it's more like a more of a rural country area, and there's less boating activity there. I mean, they still have boats. The whole lake's going to have boats, regardless. So get used to that. And up around the area, we found like a good observation point. It's very quiet up there and stuff like that, and we have good elevation from the vantage point.
I think they call it Indian Rock. There's some paintings on,
that's
on
right.
some rocks up there.
That's right. I believe that's what they call it. But anyhow, basically it was drawing toward the end of the expedition. It was getting laid out and stuff like that. We've already taken all provisions we wanted, and we basically kind of like were camped out there. We decided to spend the night there at that vantage point. It was more of the stay in the vehicle type mentality and just watch the lake. And it was basically drawing toward dusk. It cleared on up and all that, and I noticed that there was a couple of boats off to our right. On the right-hand side, that's facing towards Squally Point, and go further up, you have Rattlesnake Island. So anyhow, I decided to check out those boats with my binoculars, and as I looked through those binoculars, I started to see a hump. Almost immediately followed a second hump. and it was right between these two boats. And I've been seeing boat wakes all day long, and I knew that this was an object. It was not a wake. And he was observing like the other side of the lake, facing south, and I didn't bother to explain it. I just jumped out of that vehicle, ran to go get a picture of it. Unfortunately, by the time I got there, it was gone. It went back down again.
But you did a good thing. Tell them what you did.
What was so great about what I did?
Well, you videoed what was there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then you worked from there to get more information. Go ahead. Tell them how you did it.
So I basically lost it. I could not bring back the fact, that it came on up and then it went back down again. It probably happened within only seconds, and it was probably a wonder I seen it in the first place. Okay, it was almost luck, you might say. Well, anyhow, I took a picture immediately after the fact. I was able to get the camera set up and took a picture of it, and I basically documented it on the sighting. Shortly afterwards, one of the boats took off and went back to Naramata. We were unable to get a hold of that person to see if they've seen something too. Maybe they never seen anything before, or maybe they didn't see it at all. There's a possibility that Ogopogo come right up behind you. You don't see it because you're not aware of it, or you weren't looking for it in the first place. So it is a known phenomenon. Well, anyhow, so you have this picture. You say, well, how do I put what I seen onto this picture? Now, some people, they would have the mentality of saying, well, I'll just take the photograph and draw on there with Photoshop what I've seen. That is a big no-no, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
I mean, you're manipulating data, are you not?
That's right.
Photographs are evidence. Artwork is basically conveying what you saw. I needed to convey what I saw and not have some sort of manipulated evidence. So what I did is I took the photograph and I traced it. I traced the photograph to basically replicate what I have seen during that time period. And onto the picture that I traced, I draw what I saw. And I'm going to show it for you here on the camera. And you can see it on the video here. This is the photograph of what I took. This is the traced sketch that I drew. And as you can see, Ogopogo is basically right in the center there. And at first I wasn't so sure if it even was Ogopogo. I tried everything in the book to try to disprove it in my own mind mentally, because if I can disprove it to myself, that means someone else can disprove it easily. So be fair with yourself, Make sure that you don't believe yourself. Deceiving oneself is quite easy. So, in the morning, basically the same day we left on, I kind of got up early and I observed some swimmers on the other side of the vantage point south toward Naramata. And I was able to see from the same distance approximately on how far it was. At first I thought that maybe what I saw was swimmers from those boats, because it makes sense. Someone could be swimming out there in the water and get back in the boats and they took back off, It could have happened that way. Yep.
However, what time of day was this when you had your sighting?
It was going around dusk.
Mm-hmm. So it was getting dark.
Yeah.
Not generally when you go swimming.
No. And also we didn't know swimmers there before.
No, it's steep right there.
Yeah, we didn't notice any swimmers in that area, even if they were from the boats,
Yeah, there are no beaches.
Yeah, there was no beaches in that area. It was all basically rocky cliff and water. Well, on the other side where I saw the swimmers, that was more of a beach area.
Yeah.
And I was able to see what swimmers look like. And I was able to see the difference between Ogopogo, or at least the back of the humps of this animal, perhaps, and the swimmers. And that pretty much cemented in my mind saying, well, there goes the swimmer theory, because these humps do not replicate what the swimmers look like.
Mm-hmm.
And also was able to confirm that what I saw was an actual object, not just some sort of random wave. So
We did some work on that. How big do you think that thing was?
well, I asked you a little bit about dimensions of boats,
Mm-hmm.
and about the average boats somewhere between 15 to 30 feet,
Because
right?
we had two boats, and we could determine about the size of those two boats, and it was in
Yeah.
between them.
Yeah, yeah. So I estimate that maybe between the two humps was probably about 20 feet, somewhere between 15 and 20 feet. I'm not going to guess on how much was under the water, because I never saw what was underneath the water.
Generally, there's a lot more underwater than above water.
That's correct. But again, I'm reporting a sighting, not just speculating what was underneath the water.
And the sun, the light was low,
Mm-hmm.
so no real details.
No, you weren't able to see into the water. Forget about it. The lighting was against you.
Yeah.
So all I could see was basically a silhouette. It was basically a silhouetted sighting. And the boats were silhouetted too. You couldn't really make that much detail out, and it was getting dark.
That's what the value of that photograph was, though.
Yeah.
Because we could tell what kind of boats they were, so we could
Yeah.
determine roughly their size.
Yes, and when you talk about documentation, that's an excellent version of documentation, is an actual photograph. It'll tell you way more than you will by writing it all down with pencil and paper.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and like my painting of what I saw at Rattlesnake Island, his silhouette with his tracings adds to the size and shape of the animal. We don't have the whole picture yet, but we're putting it together.
Yep, so that's basically our expedition in the nutshell. And the second one has kind of galvanized us to want to do another one. You know, these things can be addictive if you don't watch out. So anyhow, to learn more information about expeditions and so on, you can go to animaldiscovery.org. And also you can check our YouTube channel too, which is called Dinosaur Discovery. So we're now signing out. Have a wonderful day.